Today's episode of Beyond the Mask is presented by the insurance specialists at Bright Think Wealth Strategies. Find the disability insurance coverage that fits you best right now. Email Robert Smith at rsmithjr@financialguide.com. The show is also made possible by the team at CRNA Financial Planning. Get a free consultation today to be guided through the complexities of investing and financial planning. Just visit crnafinancialplanning.com. We'd also like to thank Helping Hands and OSA EMR for their support of the show. And don't forget, listening to our podcast can earn you Class B credits. For more information on how you can submit them, check out the CE Credit tab on our website, beyondthemaskpodcast.com. Welcome to Beyond the Mask, Innovation and Opportunities for CRNAs, with Jeremy Stanley and Sharon Pierce. We know you spend your day caring for your patient's best interests. On our show, we want to care for you. Join us as we leave the operating room and learn the latest in the CRNA industry. Beyond the Mask starts in 10, 9, 8, 7.
Welcome to Beyond the Mask. I'm Jeremy Stanley, and I've been working with CRNAs for over 23 years, and I'm married to one. And my co-host is
Sharon Pierce.
Sharon's a practicing CRNA for over 20 years, a past president of the AANA, the NCANA, and she's held many other leadership roles. As usual, our goal with every episode is to educate and enlighten CRNAs, and I think our topic today is definitely going to do that. And Sharon, what time is it?
It's time to wake up, Jeremy.
I think it is. Hey, Sharon.
Well, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm
Mr.
good on this
Stanley.
Marathon day that we're having in the podcast room at the AANA Annual Congress meeting.
You're holding up pretty well.
Yeah.
No, I'm not wearing you out this
It's the
time.
first day, right? So.
Well, that is true. By tomorrow evening, you'll be worn
Yeah, tomorrow
out.
evening we'll be worn out. But
That's after the foundation event tonight.
That's right, which we will be there.
So excited. You're on the
Supporting.
foundation Board of Trustees, and thank you for your service.
Well, you're welcome. I followed in your footsteps, Madam President.
Yes, I did serve on the Board of Trustees for a while. It's a great
That's right.
organization, as we both know.
It is. They do great work, and glad to be part of it.
And I'm finally a friend for life.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, you have
That's
to die,
awesome.
but
well, yeah. Well, hey, that's a friend for life,
Well, why don't you explain Friend for Life real quickly?
So, Friend for Life is you either make a donation during your lifetime or you leave them as beneficiary of $25,000 to the foundation, and you become a friend for life for the foundation, and it's very much appreciated. You get the recognition of that, obviously, but more than that, you're supporting nurse anesthesia in the future and all the CRNAs out there who benefit from the foundation.
Absolutely. That was a really good elevator speech that you just did.
So support your foundation. Absolutely. They do great work.
Yeah, and you're my financial advisor, so you just made it happen for me.
That's right. Just call me up and we'll change that beneficiary real quick.
Yeah. And Lorraine Jordan said, it's about time, Sharon. I said, you might as well thank Jeremy, because he's like, it's about time, Sharon. And took care of it. But we have a great guest today.
We do. And this is a topic we've kind of broached on before, but I think it deserves a lot more attention. And Peter Kallio is with us today.
Hello there. Thank you for having me.
We're glad that you're here. And why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your background?
Sure. Well, I have a few hats right now, and one is I'm the executive director for AVANA, which is the Association of VA Nurse Anesthetists. Been involved in that organization for my entire VA career, which is 20 years. Clinically, I work out of the VA in Milwaukee, Zablocki VA in Milwaukee. I'm part-time now there, and I am the associate program director for Rosalind Franklin University here in Chicago.
Oh.
And spent time in the Navy as a reservist for 10 years, and kind of like my dual role of teaching and clinically working for the VA as well. Get both sides. It's really so I'm able to actually clinically coordinate our own students at the VA. It's one of our rotation sites.
Great. Well, thank you for your service, and thank you for giving back to the CRNA community for sure. And we're going to be talking about VA CRNA practice and kind of what the direction that is going in. I mean, it's been a hot topic for a little while now.
Yep.
And, I've heard a lot of CRNA say, as the VA goes,
so goes
the rest of the practice.
And I think that's where a lot of the anxiety lies with people who oppose CRNA practice.
Right.
And right, they worry that if the VA falls, so falls everybody else.
Which is the largest healthcare system in the United States.
We have 1,100 CRNAs that work for the VA right now.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that many.
It is quite a few.
Wow.
And about the same amount of physician anesthesiologists that work at the VA.
We're going to talk about that.
We are. Yeah. We are.
Because that seems a little backwards to me. But why don't we talk about, the practice currently in the VA, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Well, I think I'd start with a quote, and that is, if you've been to one VA, you've been to one VA.
I've heard that.
Because it really runs the gambit of practice scenarios, and anywhere from CRNA-only practice to very, very directed one-to-one practice. And that's something that really is kind of a huge problem within the VA, both fiscally and access-wise, which is one of the reasons we want to talk about those things.
All right, now I'm going to back up for just a minute. How many CRNAs are members of your association, AVANA?
Right now, we just kind of crossed the 400 mark. We have what we call dark sites, where we have nobody,
right.
because they've and they're probably not members of AANA as well.
Sure.
And that's something that we're working very hard to rectify. But when I came into the board of directors, I think we had 125 members.
Oh wow!
So in the last 4 years, we've done a lot of great things, and that's shown that we're making our voices heard in Washington, and that's kind of where what our whole goal was if you're not at the table,
you're on the menu.
You're on the menu.
Well, it's fairly Herculean what you guys have been able to accomplish with so few people, and I would suspect your budget's not too awesome either.
No, it's not too awesome. No, but we've got great people on our board, and we've always have, and especially in the last 4 years, we've had just amazing people that are focused and goal directed, and have really moved this organization in the right direction.
Well, our rising president of the AANA, Angie Mund, was president of this
AVANA.
Association.
Absolutely.
Also.
Yep.
Yeah. So why do so many VAs have one-to-one supervision? I mean, it just seems very archaic to me in this environment that that's still the case.
It's funny because I think if you looked at where those sites are, it's probably the sites that you would think potentially would have the closer medical direction, and that's the university-based sites. So it's actually the larger facilities within the VA. You can pretty much guarantee that they're going to be very, very MD heavy at those sites. And why is that? That's a great question, because from a fiscal perspective, it makes
no sense.
No sense.
Yeah.
From a taxpayer perspective, it makes no sense. From an access perspective, it makes no sense, right?
Right.
And we hear these stories of closing down a room because a CRNA isn't available.
Right.
Yet you've got 25 MDs sitting around, and especially at some of these bigger sites where they do have the one-to-one. I can say where I work, it's not that at all. I mean, this is again where we have one-to-one scenarios are a lot of these big university-based hospitals, and I'm at one of those university-based hospitals, but we've been able to basically follow the directives of anesthesia practice within the VA, which discourages one-to-one. So there's documented directive that discourages that sort of practice, but it still occurs every day.
Now, are the location of the facilities, does it in any way mirror the region around you with the civilian practice?
No.
They just make up their own rules.
It's
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So what's the leadership structure for CRNA practice in the VA? Does all of that just come from facility bylaws?
It's,
give me
you know,
some help here.
I think if you look at the CRNA group within the VA, we've always been sort of the orphan child.
Red-headed stepchild. Yeah.
You know, it's always been that. Even when the full practice authority mandate came through for advanced practice nurses within the VA, we were quickly and silently removed from that.
I don't know. It seemed pretty loud to me.
It was pretty loud.
I was president when some of this was going on, and we thought we were putting it to bed. And that was in 2015.
We did as well, and it was very disappointing. But you know, the loud voices and you know, trying to, and obviously voices that were not really telling the true story of what we really do.
Right.
And so we, at that point, we AVANA kind of said, we're going to take the high road, and we're going to basically go to show what we can do and be part of a solution and not be part of a problem. And it just so happened that the chief nurse of the VA for the last few years was a nurse that I knew in Milwaukee. She was the chief nurse in Milwaukee for a while and helped. Was very, very pro-nurse and pro-CRNA at that point, and helped us with some little victories in Milwaukee. And Beth Taylor was very, very significant person in us having a voice in DC, and introduced us to Undersecretary Stone and you know all of people that wanted to hear from us because they hadn't really heard from our side of things. They heard a lot of negative things about CRNA practice from another group, but they had never heard from us. And we sat down and we're like, well, this is what we do. This is our training. This is the outcome data. We were showing them all those things that there is no difference in outcomes, on provider type, and no one can show that there is. And then they started asking for information from us, and so then the dialogues began. They wanted information on practice, because truthfully, I don't think they knew what was going on from an anesthesia perspective. As far as leadership goes within the VA, we're not under nursing, which is different, and we usually fall under surgery within the leadership structure. As far as is there a chief physician, anesthesiologist, CRNA that is leader in a leadership role? No. There we have what's called a field advisory committee, the National Anesthesia Service, and they're an advisory board, which is headed by a physician, anesthesiologist, who is a great person to work with, someone was recently taken charge and has been a strong voice for collaborative practice within the VA, and working and is very pro nurses working to their training. People working to their full extent of their training. So there are some very bright things on the horizon for CRNA practice, we feel, because people are listening to what's happening, and I certainly think that once people realize the fiscal damage that the current practice at a lot of facilities is providing, we're hoping that message rings true, that we shouldn't have access problems anywhere in the VA from an anesthesia side, ever, because we have plenty of providers.
Have you thought about what would happen if you weren't able to work for 2 or 3 years? On average, 25% of people will file a disability claim, and most of us aren't prepared for that loss of income. Every CRNA needs to protect their biggest asset, yourself, and your ability to earn with a disability insurance policy. We recommend contacting Robert Smith, a master disability insurance specialist with more than 30 years of experience and 1,800 CRNA clients, to find the coverage that fits you best. The best way to do that is to send him an email at rsmithjr@financialguide.com. That's rsmithjr@financialguide.com, or call him at 504-394-6557.
Why are there so many different types of models. I mean, you said some are CRNA only, some are 1-to-1, some are, I mean, it seems like, to me, it would just make sense that this is the way we do it at the VA, not we do it 12 different ways at the VA. You know, it's not like Burger King.
Right.
Have it your way.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you say that because it's funny that you say that because they do. You know, a few years ago, we kind of said, why are we not all practicing the same way across the board? Because when people transfer, they go to a whole new culture, you know, within the VA, and everything is very, very different. So that's when the idea of standardizing care, and that was already in their works, that not just for anesthesia practice, but for all professions, they wanted to have standardized practice throughout the VA, so they could go from Milwaukee to Chicago to LA.
Yeah.
And
just pick up.
And the leadership would be the same, and the structure would be the same, and the operating, you know, procedures would be the same. Everything would be the same. And it makes a lot of sense that way. And as far as, you know, like the independent, and I know people hate that word in the VA. They hate that word independent, but the CRNA only practices are often, you know, smaller facilities, rural facilities, surgery center type facilities. And they're thriving. They're doing fine. You know, patients aren't dying in droves, and everything's actually going very, very well in those facilities.
Well, it's amazing to me how CRNAs can give anesthesia out in the field of battle because they don't send anesthesiologists or physicians there. But when you come back, you know, home, CRNAs forget how to do anything, and they need to be supervised.
Well, that's because their IQ drops on the plane.
Yeah, that must be what it is.
Well,
on the way back over the ocean, man, those IQ points just drop out over the Atlantic on the way. And then it drops even more when you go over an arbitrary state line.
Oh, yes.
Didn't you know that?
Yeah.
Well, we have a AVANA board member that works out of a VA close to here, who is a military reservist and just usually gets deployed at least once a year, and he's a forward deployed CRNA, and he is part of a surgical team with him and a surgeon and a nurse basically in the OR. And then when he comes back to his VA site, he suddenly has 1-to-1 coverage for a colonoscopy.
Wow.
Oh,
for a colonoscopy?
My God.
Yep.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's just there's
makes no
just
sense.
no words. There's none of it makes sense.
No, it doesn't. And when you talk to people in leadership, they get it. I mean,
Right.
But they've not heard.
Well, that, you know whose fault that is. It's ours.
It's our fault. Absolutely.
It is our fault, but we're changing that by leaps and bounds. Okay, so why would CRNAs work in the VA whenever they have to deal with this?
It's a special population of patients. And I grew up in the military. My father was career Army, so I knew nothing other than a military background from that perspective. I wanted to go in the military out of anesthesia school. I did. And they are a different type of patient to care for, and you want to care for these guys. And the environment there is so much different than a private hospital. I was in private practice before I went to the VA. And it's just the population is different. The culture is different. These guys,
give up everything.
They give up everything. And even when they're there, they're pushing their buddy around the hospital that needs to get to the cafeteria or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it's that. You don't see that at a private hospital. So the culture is different. I love working at the VA. I really do. And, you know, I just wish that all VAs were structured from an anesthesia perspective in a way that people want to work there. And that's our dream. Our dream is to have everybody working well together. You know, I think the fear mongering that goes on a lot of times is the fear that we're here to replace physicians, and that's not the case. It's never been the case, and that's what we're really trying to push home to leadership in DC. That's not our goal. None of that's our goal. There's not enough of us to go around to begin with. But why don't we allocate the resources that we have within the VA to be much more cost effective? Let's get people to the places that need bodies to perform anesthesia. And you know, when you have 60 providers for 8 operating rooms and 5 out of OR sites, you've got plenty of people.
Right.
Let's just figure out how we can eliminate things like waiting lists. Not that there's a lot of waiting lists anymore, because we don't really have those anymore, but access to care, they should be able to get into the operating room, and anesthesia should not be the roadblock, because we have the bodies to cover.
Pierre, are there pay issues at the VA as well?
That unfortunately has really come to the surface in the last couple of years, especially. We are capped right now to a bar that is well below what the private sector is paying right now. So I can tell you, at my facility right now, anybody that I work with at the VA could walk across the street to the university hospital and be making significantly more. I'm talking $50,000 to $90,000 more a
Wow.
year. And so even people that love their job at the VA are thinking,
It's a big nut.
I love that job
Yeah.
at the VA, but is it worth $90,000?
Right.
Now, do y'all get the governmental benefits? And I guess where I'm going with this is you work at the VA. Can you retire earlier and you still get health care? And I say that because I've been a nurse for 38 years.
Yep.
Everybody that I went to school with that worked for the state are long retired.
Yep.
And I can't get health care, so I'm going to have to wait to retire till I get Medicare. So in my mind, you pay now, you pay later. They're done, and I still got a lot of years to go.
There's
not that
definitely
many.
there's definitely a benefit to working
Not
for the
that many what?
Years for
to go.
you to go.
Shut up. I am going to hit you.
You made it sound like a lot.
It is a lot of years whenever you got to get up at 4:15 every morning. We digress. Excuse
Peter.
us.
No.
I just had to throw that in there when you said that. All right.
But you're right. There definitely is a huge advantage,
Yeah.
to work for the VA.
And then you can make that extra $50,000 in half a year.
And I think if people are thinking long term, that does play a role, and
Right.
it certainly would be, in my head. But when you're looking at 20-somethings coming, or
Yeah,
early
I get it.
30-somethings coming out with $250,000 in debt,
Right.
and all of a sudden they can make a significant amount more across the street.
Sure. And get the BMW.
Then the pension 30 years from now doesn't really.
Yeah, it's a long ways
It's a
off.
long ways
Little
off.
do they know how close 30 years is.
Exactly. Exactly. And so it does play a role, and it's like I said, from a benefits perspective, the VA is a great place to work. But from a pay perspective, they're really having a problem right now. And
Didn't they just do something about that recently?
There was some legislation that passed that says we can bypass or go above that aggregate limit right now.
Mm-hmm.
But the methodology, the mechanism for making that happen still is not there. And
Okay, so this was in name only.
For now,
you
yes.
got married, but you hadn't consummated the marriage.
Correct.
Okay.
Wow.
Correct.
Well, I mean that.
It's a big deal.
Are people
See?
leaving? I mean, are you seeing a shortage at the VA now of CRNAs?
I spoke with a couple of colleagues of mine here in the Chicago area, and one of them just told me that 4 CRNAs from his place have just recently resigned in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
4 to go to a local hospital across the street, basically.
Well,
very
the sad
close.
thing is, even in the VA or even in the private sector, there's always got to be some sacrificial lambs for everybody gets the message.
You're right.
Yep.
I mean, it just is what it is. A facility that I work in, there were CRNAs who are going to leave before upper management gets the message, we've got to deal with this problem. So those CRNAs left, and that's the only way the powers that be are going to get
And
the
what
message.
happens is when people that work call and do extra overtime, once they hit that limit, pay stops. And
Wow.
Base pay continues, but any additional pay that they don't get, and then it gets deferred.
there's no incentive.
It gets deferred to the next year.
So socialism doesn't even work in the military.
Right.
Wow. Wow.
So then they get a big chunk in January or the next
I get
fiscal
it.
year, and then they pay a huge amount of tax on that.
Sure.
And then it just moves up that bar sooner. So every year that this pay stays where it is.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. I know you did, Jeremy.
Yep.
Yep. So you know where I'm coming from on
Yep.
that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's a big problem. It's something that affects both recruitment, certainly, but more importantly, the way I look at it is retention.
Yeah.
Beyond the Mask is made possible by the team at CRNA Financial Planning. With almost 2 decades of experience, the firm guides CRNAs through the complexities of investing and financial planning. Schedule a free consultation today by calling 855-304-3748 or go online to crnafinancialplanning.com.
I know the economics of this. I mean, the MDs are scared that the CRNAs are going to take their job away.
And we're not.
But that's the problem, and that's why there's so much pushback on this. And I get it. I mean, if you can, I'm sure the anesthesiologists are making more than the CRNAs are. And they should. I mean, they're MDs. They should. But they also, from my understanding, have a pretty cush position for the most part, especially if you're one-to-one. And there's an inherent problem there. I'm sure that they have developed ways to influence that system as well.
Right. And a lot of this is university-based driven, university-driven.
Yeah.
And, and a lot of universities want their longtime faculty to spend the last few years in the VA system, because it takes 5 years to become eligible for a pension.
Oh, there you go. Always comes back to money. Sharon, always
well,
comes back to money.
What is it? The answer's always money. What was the question?
Yeah.
Exactly. So what can we do to improve this situation?
Well, what we've done is that, from the membership for us right now, from AVANA's perspective, getting the knowledge out there for the CRNAs to understand that why is it important to support a standardized practice care within the VA? Why is it important for CRNAs to be able to practice to their full training within a VA system? It's important because it trickles down. Mm-hmm. And what the feds do sort of always kind of sets the standard for what the rest of the country ends up doing. And I was on the board of nursing in Wisconsin for 8 years, and when this stuff came down a few years ago for the NP practice, we were all of a sudden it opened up doors for us to change law and change rule, and in Wisconsin that this is a we're waiting for these things, and legislation came through, was being developed as we spoke, right, as that was happening. Of course, when the CRNAs got left out, created problems for us there too. But I truly think it's a matter of time within the VA, and that's one thing that we learned working in the VA, that things don't move very quick.
I was going to say, nothing happens quickly.
Nothing happens quickly, and you have to be patient, and you have to be persistent, and you have to be positive, and you have to be part of the solution.
Is there an adversarial relationship there too, Peter? I mean, is it, because in some facilities, I mean, the CRNAs and anesthesiologists work very well together, but it's outside that there's this adversarial relationship. Is there any adversarial relationships in the VAs?
We hear about that.
Yeah.
And I can go through even where I work. It's very collegial. I mean, we work well together.
Yeah.
Where I do, but I do know that
it happens.
It happens. I do know that several people in my department signed off on some pretty ugly letters. That I was like, really, you signed that? In my own head, it's like, wow.
Right.
But but yeah, you're right. It's sort of on the outside of that. Mm-hmm. But we have heard of retaliation as well at other sites, and it goes on. We know it does.
Yeah.
AVANA has done. We do surveys every couple of years to kind of get a pulse of the VA, and we ask about that. What's your relationships like? Has there been retaliation? Do you feel threatened? And that has definitely increased since all of this in the last few years.
Sure. So what can CRNAs out there who are listening help out in this situation? I think y'all have got something, friends of
We absolutely, we have a program. So, we're an organization outside of the AANA. We're not part of the AANA now,
and not part of our budget,
and not part of your budget.
But we do give a lot of resources to you guys. We support you heavily.
Yes, and that has been a positive thing in the last few years from a marketing perspective and from access to things for us. It has really been a huge benefit. But if you think about where your AANA dues go, a lot of that goes to the state.
Right.
And the states are great, but they're not the VA. They don't represent the VA. They represent the states. So that money, a lot of people within the VA feel is wasted. So, I would venture to bet that many VA CRNAs are not members of AANA. And we estimate that number to be 30% potentially.
Wow.
Of VA CRNAs that are not members because of that alone.
Because of that reason.
So we've been working outside. So how do we get that to happen? And so we have this program called Friends of AVANA, and a lot of the state organizations have been donating fairly regularly to our budget to help us with travel expenses, and we have a association management company that is not free. And that has really helped us pay for all of those things, and individuals and have reached out and have donated money, and that has kept us afloat from having an association management company that we were all doing on our own up until a few years ago. Has been tremendous, and we've got some pretty steady members, and I have to shout out to PANA, the Pennsylvania organization, who has unbelievably well supported us over the last few years to basically cover half of our association management fees.
Oh wow! Nice.
And so I'm
Who's your association management firm by chance? Is it Peggy?
Yes.
Blankenship?
Yep.
Okay.
She's awesome.
Yes.
You're very lucky.
Yeah, and so we were really fortunate from a PANA perspective and from a Friends of AVANA, and that program has just continued to get better year over year. So we feel that we're in a good fiscal perspective, and then we feel that we're representing our members in DC. There are 3 CRNAs right now that have been detailed that work not out of DC, but are detailed there on a at least a half-time perspective. With another one just starting this week, which we've never had a CRNA anywhere in DC.
Wow. That's great.
3 years ago, and now we've got 3.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we're there. We're at the table. People hear from us. They know what we are. They know who we are, and that's been huge for us.
That is huge. Sharon, what do you say? If you're not at the table, you're
on the menu.
On your menu. Yeah, exactly.
Well, Peter, this has been great. As we kind of wrap up, anything you want to conclude on and get across to our listeners?
Just when you see people from AVANA, we're at all the meetings. Consider where we are and what we're doing and what our end goals are. And our end goals basically is to have CRNAs within the VA practicing to their full level of training. Now, that does not mean that we're not going to work together with physicians. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, don't say I can't do that. Don't say I can't put in a central line or I can't put in a regional block because I'm a CRNA. I run a program. I know we're training our students to do those things. So they're trained to do this. So let's let them do that and improve that access to care. And we're not doing this at the expense of physician positions. We're just saying, let's make this better. We can do better. We can do better by the taxpayer. We can do better for our veterans.
Absolutely.
The only victim is the veteran if we don't do this.
Yep.
Yeah. That and the taxpayer. So.
Right.
Yep. Peter, thank you for being on.
Well,
with
thanks
us
for
today.
having me.
We appreciate it. Thank you for your service and all
Thank
you
you.
do
Absolutely.
for the CRNA community. And so if our listeners want to be able to give to AVANA, I'm sure there's a website.
VACRNA.com.
VACRNA.com. And, as Peter said, and we all know, as the VA goes, so goes everything. So CRNAs out there. Maybe if you feel inclined, go to that website and shoot them some money.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Sharon, I think it's a wrap.
I think so.
Well, if people like our show, Sharon, and want to help us out, what can they do to help us grow?
Well, the best way to help us grow is to leave us a review, but make it
positive. We
5
all
stars.
know there's enough negativity in this world.
Absolutely. We're in the top 50 medical podcasts in the country, on the way to number
1, just like we are in the CRNA community. We're the number 1 podcast for CRNAs.
Yes, we are, and we'd like to thank all of our listeners for putting us there.
Absolutely. We couldn't do it without them. So,
No, we could
and we
not.
couldn't bring great people like Peter in and get the word
Absolutely.
out either. So,
Absolutely.
until next time.
It's a wrap.
As a CRNA, you spend years preparing yourself for this career, so we don't want to see you lose out on any of the income you've worked so hard to earn. The best way to protect yourself and give you the confidence that a major life event won't disrupt your financial future is through disability insurance. We've known disability income specialist Robert Smith for many years and have seen the work he's done with nearly 2,000 CRNAs over multiple decades. He can help identify any gaps in your existing coverage and fill those gaps by finding the best value on a policy. Contact Robert and let him know you heard about him on our podcast. Send him an email at rsmithjr@financialguide.com. That's rsmithjr@financialguide.com. Or call him at 504-394-6557. Protect your greatest asset as a CRNA, yourself and your ability to earn a living by adding disability insurance to your financial plan. Today's show is brought to you by the folks at CRNA Financial Planning, an independent consulting firm that offers financial planning services exclusively to CRNAs and their families. From planning for a child's future college expenses to building a predictable income stream in retirement, the firm is committed to offering you comprehensive financial services, customized to fit your unique needs and objectives. If you have questions about your financial future, get them answered. Call the team at 855-304-3748. That's 855-304-3748. Or go online to crnafinancialplanning.com.
Hi, this is Jackie Rolls, President of the International Federation of Nurse Anesthetists and President and founder of Our Hearts, Your Hands, a global anesthesia support community that takes donations to allow nurse anesthetists in low and middle income countries to go to educational programs, buy equipment, or textbooks. Your donations are tax deductible, and we would appreciate your support.
OSA EMR is a free anesthesia EMR developed by CRNAs that you can download and use on an iPad. Our nonprofit mission is to make sure that solo and small practice CRNAs can digitally record their anesthetics. To learn more, visit osaemr.com to download and consider donating to our cause. Remember, for CRNAs, data is destiny.
Be sure to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere you like to listen to shows. Also be sure to check out BeyondTheMaskPodcast.com. Each episode is posted there with a corresponding blog post, and we timestamp important parts of the episode to help you quickly get to the content you're looking for. Also check out the special series section on the site. You can follow along and catch up on the CRNA History Series, episodes specifically about political conversations in the industry. Or try the CRNA Personal Finance Series. It's all on BeyondTheMaskPodcast.com. And if you have a question for the show or want to be a guest, or even suggest a particular topic, fill out the contact form on the site or send an email directly to us at info@BeyondTheMaskPodcast.com. And lastly, let's take the conversation social. Check out our Beyond the Mask podcast Facebook page and Facebook group.